Hey, you're listening to the Intentional Documentary Podcast. So glad to have you. Around here, I'm gushing over the stories behind the pictures that we freaking love of our own lives. You know, the ones we hold as high value and iconic, because this is where photography meets real life. I'm your host, Marie Moss, and I believe that the best way to approach your photography is through your lens, your way. Through insightful conversations with photographers, I'll explore preserving life with your camera and using what lights you up to grow your brand. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Intentional Documentary. This one's for you if you're looking to connect with your potential dreamies, but you're hiding. You're hiding behind the computer. You're hiding in your Instagram captions. You're just writing to express your stories, and you're not actively speaking your stories to create rich connection and relationships. Today, we're going to talk about confidently speaking your stories. And for the record, I am a writer. I love writing. I have lots of loyal readers. I love being able to process my thoughts and put them into words in written format more than I do just speaking from the heart. But still, I'm here to tell you, to shout from the rooftops that there's magic when you speak your stories, when people hear your voice and see your face and your body language that you are missing out on if you're only doing the writing and throwing a photo out there and hoping that people interpret it in the way that is in your freaking heart. So we're going to talk about so many things today, and we're going to start with where might you speak your stories? Because I know you're probably thinking, Marie, I don't want to become a speaker. I don't want to be doing what you're doing. So what do you mean? So I'm going to give you some examples. The first is, let's just address the elephant in the room. Everybody's talking about video. If you are learning from anybody who is teaching marketing online, especially, they're teaching you to express yourself through video. They're telling you do more Instagram or Facebook lives, be in your Instagram stories, because people are watching. Your dreamies are watching. And for so long, I resisted this because, and if I'm being honest, I still kind of do. You don't see me on Instagram live or Instagram stories very often. I look at my own intake of content and information, and I'm not really that much of a video person, but just because I'm not definitely doesn't mean that my dreamies are not, and the same goes double for you. So I want you to just be open to knowing that the fact is video consumption is growing. That's a fact. So another place besides just social media is when we develop a welcome system for potential clients and customers, which is what we do in Mastery Moment Seekers. Instead of text-heavy emails and blog posts and things like that on your website or in your emails, you can add in a video or an audio, and it just conveys your messaging with that almost in-person type of experience. Even though it's just video, it's a different layer of connection compared to just writing your thoughts. Another place, in real life interactions, I have found it to be a zillion times more connective to speak through a story than simply saying, I'm a photographer, or I'm a documentary family photographer, or I photograph families in their home. Because when you say it in that way, you're kind of putting a label on what you do, and you're leaving it open to their interpretation of what that means. You're speaking more in a logical way, and you're speaking to their brain, which means that you're more susceptible to their perception. When you speak in story, you speak to their heart, and their perception is met with more accuracy as you convey your message. It's just different. The next place you might speak your stories would be in running a beginner level photography workshop. In my Profitable Photography Workshops program, I structured that program intentionally to be a platform for you to express your stories, your approach to photography, so that the people in your room, the people you're teaching, the people likely to be your dreamiest dreamies are hearing and falling in love with your conviction for what you do. And it's working. Photographers are educating their communities and booking clients through this platform alone. Believe me, we've got the success stories to back that up. And I know that it's working because it is a place for genuine, like not genuine, but just deeper connection than what you're going to get in an online, just passing in conversation type of a way. And then lastly, say you don't speak your stories before the inquiry call at all. You lean on those social posts that are more, just a text and sharing pictures, emails, blog posts, and word of mouth. To come across confident and sincere on your inquiry calls, you need that mindset that comes along only with experience in speaking your stories. That mindset is one of you believing to the core in what you do, believing beyond a shadow of a doubt. It is truly this mental swagger that puts you in what I call the chef position, not the order taker. I'm sure you may have heard me talk about be the chef, not the order taker. I've got an episode coming up about that if you do not. But I just wanted to highlight that. All that to say, no matter where you're speaking your stories, you've got to speak them. Dreama Spence has been working with me for some time. She's been doing design work. She has been the one being the person intaking the stories that we publish on Fearless and Framed and getting those published for us. And we were just talking back and forth, and she asked me how I prepare for my videos because I come across so confidently, yet I tend to talk about how on, say, like Instagram Live, for example, I feel like I ramble and I feel like I must sound like a total idiot half the time. And in other scenarios, like here on this podcast, I am completely confident. So like, why is that? And all of that fun stuff. So just real quick on the podcast, I have a mic in front of me and I am in a room where I can start and stop what I'm saying and sort of meld it all together. But when I'm on Instagram Live, there's no, like, it's the live show. There's no, like, to me, it's like you got to do your best, or like all the errors or all your like warts and all are going to be revealed when you mess up. And it's not so much that I worry about messing up, but it's that I tend to think while I speak. So I get tripped up there as well. So I've got some practical options for speaking your stories confidently that I'm excited to share. And without further ado, enjoy the story. Number 1, decide the kind of speaker you want to be, or decide how you want this next story you share, decide how you want that to go. Growing up, I loved the show Saved by the Bell. And if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've watched it, but I'm picturing this episode where Screech was ridiculously nervous over having to deliver this presentation or this speech to his class or something like that. And I just remember all the stereotypes were there. I mean, you know how it is on TV and in movies, they make things even more like just so dramatic. They exaggerate things, and all the stereotypes of the nervousness and the sweat and the forgetting of what to say and making a fool of himself. It was all there. And I remember thinking, I am never going to react like that when I am given an assignment or have to speak. Like I'm just opting out of that. That's not going to happen. And I remember in my senior year in high school, like we had to do our senior speech, which is giving a controversial topic talk to our class, where we all had to pick something like stem cell research or euthanasia, among many other things. And of course, like I didn't want to do it. I wasn't passionate about any of the topics on the menu. but knowing that I had to do it in order to get my grade, I looked at how this was going to roll as a decision I could make, like a choice I had. I could either marinate in all the reasons I didn't want to do it and allow those fears to come into fruition, or I could decide to feel differently. And I remember back then, like when I really think about that time, I remember thinking about how it didn't really, like I wanted a good grade, but I think I assumed I would get a good grade just by doing the assignment and just by putting the effort in. And what I like kind of cared more about was just making a fool of myself. But then when I really thought about it, I didn't really care what these people thought because they were just my classmates. They weren't my closest friends or family. I was in part of like a big school, so there were a lot of people in my class that I didn't even really talk to. So their opinion didn't really matter to me. So that just gave me a permission slip to not worry about what they thought. And I figured too, they probably didn't really care that much about what I was saying because they're like me. They're just there to do the work that they have to do to get the grade, and their mind was on graduating and our lives after high school. So what I've kind of gained out of that was that we don't really ever have to worry about the reaction, so to speak, because the right people, which is probably who you are speaking to when it comes to sharing your stories, they are listening and they are tuned in and they are excited about what you have to say. And the people who don't really care what you have to say are probably tuning out. So, I mean, it's like so much of today's personal development teachings. You get to decide how you feel. Even if you have fear and you're worried about whatever, you have the choice to either be a martyr to it or the choice to acknowledge it and work through it, knowing that you're going to get better with practice. Number 2 is lower the freaking bar. And this has 2 parts to it. So like a part A and a part B, because I find that we kind of hype ourselves up about what this thing that we're doing is going to mean, whether it's as simple as an Instagram live that you're going to take 10 minutes or a half hour to do, or a workshop that you're running. We build up this hype in our head of what it's going to mean. It's going to give us results of, whatever that goal is. And we want to do it in a way where we feel good about ourselves. We feel proud about ourselves that, maybe this is the thought that maybe people don't want to speak out loud too much, but we want people to be on the other side of whatever it is that we've just conveyed and think like, wow, that was really freaking good. And that like really boils down to perfection. So part 1 of lower the freaking bar is to let go of the outcome, or I should say part A, so to speak. In my direct sales business, and how I think some people feel about their profitable photography workshops, is that, I had it in my head that I wanted to blow their minds. And I also had that specific outcome, which was return on my investment. Like I didn't want to go do a demonstration at somebody's house for 35, 40 minutes and get nothing out of it. No, I wanted bookings, I wanted new consultant leads, and I wanted sales. And when I did my photography workshops, I wanted new photography clients or students for continued mentoring. So often I'd go into the demo in my direct sales business and I was just met with complete and total silence. And at some parties, people were really into it. But other times it was like they were only there to show up for their friend and they really could not care less about what I was saying. So through that experience, I learned 2 things real quick. One was that when they didn't care, when this group didn't really care about what I was saying and it was obvious, it was never a reflection of me or my speaking abilities, for example. They just weren't my right people. So that kind of ties back into to number 1 with what I was saying about you get to decide like what how this experience is going to feel. And number 2, the only way to protect myself from the heartbreak of no bookings, no consultant interest, or no orders, or in workshops, no bookings or no new students, was to let go of the outcome when I was speaking and just meaning you have to speak and express your stories for you, for the sake of letting out what it is that you have to say. And that needs to be your outcome. That needs to be your goal, that you got it out. And the other place to lower the freaking bar, like part B to this, is in how you speak. So remove the emotion of, oh my gosh, I said or I said like a lot. I am totally guilty of saying like often. Or I lost my train of thought. Oh my gosh, how do I recover from this? And then like you're thinking while you're trying to speak, like I do. Or I got tongue twisted here. Or just being mortified when your kid walks in the room. Those things are gonna happen. And it's so easy when you're speaking to catch those things going on and then allow it to take your power in the moment. Your power, though, is in your decision to ignore it and continue on with what it is you've got to say and get it out. Think of an Olympic gymnast who goes just completely down in their routine. They tumble, they fall, and what do? They get back up and they continue on, and just as much as they've practiced their actual routine and the movements and all of that, they've also practiced the ability to let go of the mistake in the moment and continue on with a mindset like that didn't just happen. Because you can play back what happened later and learn from it, but in the moment, just go on. Make light of it if you want to. I mean, sometimes I'll make fun of myself for my tongue twisters and things like that. But the point is remove the emotion around showing up perfectly. So both of those, removing the emotion and letting go of the outcome, like what those really boil down to is just lower the bar of your expectations for what that Instagram live or that workshop or this video you're creating, like what it means, and know that you can do it once and let it out there, but you can also go back and do it again later as your speaking skills improve. Number 3, practice what you want to say. I know, thank you, Captain Obvious, but this is overlooked. Or maybe you expect to be fantastic right out of the gate because you go into your Instagram stories and it just seems like everybody's just talking right from their heart, and you want to feel like you want to have that flow. You want to have that edge of being authentic and really like cool in that way, and just be completely driven by inspired action on the fly and not all planned and prepared. But hear me out. When I was in direct sales, we had to do a 40-minute presentation at our parties. I just told you about that. And it was always in front of mostly strangers. And I obviously wanted my business to succeed. So I wanted people to, again, book a party, order product, or become a consultant like me. So it was so important that I nailed this demonstration. I had my uplines demo outlined, like the word for word what she says at her demonstrations, and it was my Bible, and I did not want to stray from it. I'd walk around my house speaking that demo to myself until it was a part of me. And it was, I couldn't tell you now because this was back in 2006, but I mean, it didn't take that long. To me, it was kind of like learning manual mode. Remember making pictures and when you'd have to slow down and you'd have to think, okay, what should my ISO be? What should my aperture be? What should my shutter speed be? And it was like this battle of trying to think through what it needed to be before you missed the moment. It was so frustrating back then. And I found like that's what, like walking my house, speaking this demo and just reading it out loud to myself, it was like that time period. But then eventually in manual mode, and if you're not there yet, it will get there as long as you keep practicing, it becomes so second nature that you literally don't have to think about any of those settings. There's no preparing. You just do when you see a moment and you want to shoot. my demo for my direct sales business became exactly like that. I stopped needing to prepare before a party. I stopped having to think about what I was going to say, and I just did it. So when you see those people in Instagram stories, even though they're coming across as like on the fly, and they probably are, make no mistake, this is not the first time they've thought about these thoughts. They have been things that have been in them, and they've been thinking through them, and maybe even are things that they have said before in other situations that you just haven't seen yet. So let go of that pressure of feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't come across as like polished and prepared, so therefore I can't polish and prepare so that I don't seem that way. It just all needs to flow out of me with such ease and such grace. So it's just not how it has to be, and you're just creating pressure for yourself that does not need to be there. So when it comes to the short stories that you want to share, if you're not completely confident, this is the key. If you're not completely confident in expressing yourself and you want to come across like your stories just flow out of you effortlessly, you've got to practice what you want to say to begin with to get to that point. Wow, I'm kind of all fired up on this stuff, aren't I? All right, point number 4. And I think this is the last one. Yeah. Acknowledge and collect the stories. Like, this should be your freaking job. What to say tends to be an issue for a lot of people. You want to speak from a place of inspiration, and some days you've just got it. And some days you just don't feel like you've got anything to say. I mean, that is true for everyone. Make no mistake. I want you to build a library of stories. That's what the Memorable Brand Story Workshop is about, which is inside of Mastery Moment Seekers now. And it's what we've been doing in the Preservation Project. The stuff, like this library, if you're like, what do you mean? This library should be filled with the stories, with the stuff that's tried and true that you repeat over and over because they work. What do I mean by they work? They plant seeds of connection. I promise you, when you find a story that you're inspired and delightfully energized to share, that same story will be just as delightfully energizing to share again 4 months down the road. No one says you can only share a story once and then you're done. Do you ever notice how some of maybe your favorite people that you follow on Instagram, sometimes it feels like they're talking about the same thing over and over, just slightly differently? That's intentional. And I know we could go down this whole like rabbit hole of like, well, it's so obvious and you can see through the line, like read between the lines when you're looking at that account from the outside. But at the same time, if you look at the engagement of the people who are commenting on their stuff, like their people are like rabid fans because whatever they're talking about really means something with depth to those people. So I just want you to keep that in mind. So if you do need to pause long enough to pay attention to your stories, just remember, like, I'm here to help you with that. And you can shoot me an email, marie@fearlessandframed.com, because that's honestly like that. If I had to say like what I do for a living, it is exactly that. It's I help people pause long enough to pay attention to their stories, whether that's to document them, to express them in their business, or what have you. So I want you to visit the show notes for today's reflection questions. I want to cut this a little early because I've got an extra special announcement today. You can visit the show notes though at fearlessandframed.com/051. And I just got 3 questions there for you. But again, I'm wrapping this a little early because I want you to pause what you're doing right now if you can and hear this message. My friend, there is a brand new community on the horizon, and I'm so excited to tell you about it and invite you to it. The Intentional Documentary Community. You may have seen after 5 years and over 7,000 members, I recently closed my Goodbye Posing Guide group on Facebook. If you weren't a part of that group or you missed the beginning back in 2014, 2015 or so, It was a lovely place to be. Eventually, though, through the years, more voices, more opinions, the documentary family photography genre just grew, and the community became something that felt more like a weight and a place I had to be cautious in rather than the safe space where we could photograph freely and feel nothing short of delight to be a part of and feel just pure celebration over what we were documenting, the things that really mattered to us and our clients. And it was that freaking simple. And I know I'm not alone in that. After closing my group, I've received dozens, literally dozens of messages, emails, and text messages that have affirmed this new direction. People have been reaching out to say things like, I want to read just a few of these because they really touched my heart. One, and this one was a really short and sweet one that seemed to be really consistent in a lot of the messages. And it said, through your group, you gave me permission to shoot what lights me up. Or I would hear things like, you helped me find my heart in this and things like that. Another, I must say that I love your messaging and different voice to what many are talking about with documentary family photography. I'd love the opportunity to contribute to a new group in a supportive way that builds a strong and friendly community. Another, I have such fond memories of when I first joined, and you're right, it was magical. You're the reason I love documentary and the original founder of it in my eyes. Of course, that touched my heart, even though I don't think it's true. Documenting came a lot, way before I did. I just put it into words, I guess. And she said, when I've heard other photographers talk about it to groups, it's not the same. I miss the old days of this group. I'll definitely be following. And that one just was was so reaffirming that there is, there's this beating pulse out there that I have felt that other people are feeling as well. And one more example, I have found this to be the most meaningful way to document my family. I'm so thankful that there's this community that exists and gets it. I've signed up to be part of the newer group because I know what will happen there will be important and sincere, and that it will be. The intentional documentary community is being built already, and it's being built with more intention so that we put what matters first, and we protect that mission. We protect that ability to see more of what matters so that we can document it. It'll go live in the fall, and this is your invitation to hear about it first. Visit fearlessandframed.com/community. I'll see you there. Thank you for listening. If you've got a quick sec, leave a review. Utilize that space to let me know what spoke to you out of today's episode, what questions were sparked from you. Every single time that I hear from you, you spark ideas in me that I put right back into the podcast for you. So it's win-win, right? You can always hit me up over on Instagram at fearlessandframed is my handle. And as always, you can go to fearlessandframed.com/intentional documentary podcast for this episode's show notes and any mini mags and past show notes. All the goodness is over there. And until next time, what are you going to preserve next? Talk to you soon.